Thanks for tuning into the Carry Handle podcast. Here's your hosts, Bryce and Kevin.
Welcome back to the Carry Handle podcast. How are you, Kevin?
I'm well, Bryce. Thanks for letting me come along this time.
No problem. And hopefully everybody heard the intro that time.
Yes, all 7, possibly 10, if we can.
Whoa, now.
Yeah, if we can get them
pushing
to
the
10.
limits of possibilities here.
Yeah, I'm a real ambitious one. I am.
I like it. I love it. What are we talking about this evening?
I was thinking
That's dangerous.
practical AR-15 versus Gucci AR, or more so, what you need versus what you want.
Do you want to start with practical or Gucci?
I want to start with practical and then work our way up to Gucci, because practical can easily turn into Gucci if you put the right stuff on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, an entry-level AR can... You throw a mall on there and you're $4,000 on the hole just for IR.
Yeah.
Infrared for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Right. And you need infrared if you have the vision.
Now, do you need it? Or are we talking about need versus want?
You want it, is what you want.
I definitely want it. I want GP NVGs in the worst way possible. I want GP NVGs than I want my left lung. More than my left lung is what I meant to say there.
Well, all I need is $40,000 and a dream. All right, so back to the practical AR versus the Gucci AR. I was thinking about like the purposes for defense, home defense and mid. And
when you say practical, what in your head is practical, and what do you want on that rifle?
I want iron sights and a white light. PID iron sights.
So iron sights, or do you want sighting or a sighting system?
If we're doing a bare bones practical necessity, I would be okay with some iron sights. Mind you, they have to be quality iron sights, not the cheap plastic garbage you can find.
Okay, so in terms of who is this rifle for? Is it entry level for the user, or is it for money? Is it entry level in terms of value?
I would say it's entry level for someone that wants to branch off into this firearms world that they've heard so much about from the previous five episodes.
I have no idea.
5 episodes. I don't know. I can't do math. But they've heard about us talk about some other stuff in previous episodes, and they're like, hey, this is interesting. I want to get into this. But I have a job and I have financial responsibilities, and I can't just go drop X amount of money on building an AR right now.
Well, so as long as there's an understanding of the skill in the practice that, or maybe not skill, but the time in that you need to put on iron sights to be proficient with them, as long as we have that caveat out of the way, if you're willing to put the time and effort into becoming proficient with iron sights, they're absolutely adequate. They can get the job done. We've been using them for decades. But if you want a pretty quick, easy way of aiming your rifle, might consider a red dot.
I agree with that. I'll agree.
That's how I kind of see red dots, is this great equalizer. Is it makes the time investment so much less on something like a rifle, and even with red dots on handguns, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But it makes it so that somebody can shoulder a rifle, put a red dot on something they want to shoot, and it makes it a lot easier and a lot more intuitive to just shoot. So I would make the argument that maybe it would be worth investing a little bit more on bare bones a Holosun. Now, if you're looking at a sight mark or one of those airsoft red dots, get the iron sights anyway. I'd rather see somebody use really good quality iron sights as opposed to a completely, I don't know, hobby grade red dot.
Right, and that's you got to watch out when you're a newcomer because you're new on the market. You might go on Amazon, type in gun red dot, and Amazon's going to berate you. You have some Holosuns on Amazon. I bought mine off of Amazon,
Right.
so they're on there. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you might get bamboozled, if you will, into buying an airsoft red dot that you think's really nifty and cool. You put it on your weapon, take it out to the range, and the thing just poops to bed. And in your mind, you're like, oh, all red dots are garbage because you had a bad experience
Right.
with a crappy red dot that had no business being on a real gun anyway.
That's an excellent point. So the other thing that I would say more important, or I would say of equal importance, if you have one, you need to have the other. It's a white light. And you mentioned that already, but now when we say white light,
Yes.
I don't mean an Enforce. I don't mean an Olight.
Oh God, no! Please, no. We may not do any brand recognition on this channel from here on out. Olights, garbage. Never buy them. Never touch them. Never look at them. If your friend gives you one, hit your friend in the face for giving you a crappy light, and then promptly.
Well, if you turn it on, you have an impromptu grenade, though, right?
it might get a flash out of it.
So for anybody that doesn't know or anything about Olight and they see them, they seem to think that, or they see them and take them as a serious weapon light option. They are not. Anybody with any time in the gun community and or using and or shooting anything for any length of time will tell you that Olights have a horrendous track record.
Moving on from that, you need a white light. So you need a red. So we agree that you need iron sights, red dot.
Bare minimum white light, I would say Streamlight HLX or the Streamlight Rail series or rail mounted series. Bare minimum. They have decent candela. They have really good lumens. The HLX series has about 1,000.
Yeah.
I think the other rail mounted Streamlights have a little bit more candela. And when I say candela, that's how far the light gets pushed. The lumens is how bright it is, and the flood. And flood means how wide it is. So if you've ever seen like your dad's mag light from like the big heavy old law enforcement lights that they used to use, there's a circle and then there's a little circle in the middle. The circle in the middle that goes the furthest you can think of as candela. And then lumens and flood is the outer ring that makes it super wide, but there's no hot spot.
Right.
So candela, think hot spot. Lumens and flood, think outside ring.
Right.
For all intents and purposes.
Right.
So the candela and the lumen output on an HLX is your bare minimum. And I'll talk about nicer lights in a little while, but that if you want a light, that's it. It's a little heavy, but they're also pretty solid. They come with pretty solid kit. They come with pretty solid activation switches. They're pretty switched on lights.
Yeah, and
pun intended.
Yeah, and if you're as smart as I am, you might get one that has a laser that's totally useless. But it's okay because I still have the light.
Well, if you had a laser that wasn't completely nerfed by the Food and Drug Administration, it would be really cool.
Yes.
So, a sighting system and a white light. Let's talk about the rifle. Bare minimum rifle. So, in terms of rifles, I would stay away from .223 caliber rifles as a whole. That limits your ammunition availability, especially for somebody that isn't as informed about ammo as some others that have been doing it a little longer. If you go to a gun store, and you ask for, I want .223. Well, some guy's probably going to hand you a box because I've had this happen, and he goes, 5.56 is the same. It's not. It is not the same. Do not put 5.56 in a .223. It might work for 5 rounds. It might work for 10 rounds, but eventually it might go a little bit more exciting for you.
Why are we unable to put 5.56 into a .223 chambered?
The chamber pressures are different in 5.56 versus .223. they're a lot higher in a 5.56 than they are a 2.23. I'm not saying your gun will blow up, but it's not designed for 5.56 if it's specifically a 2.23 chamber.
Okay. It's like,
Now, if you were to buy a 2.23 Wild, it's supposed to chamber both, but then we're getting into more minutia that I don't exactly feel like the person that we're talking to at the moment really cares about. If you're going to get a rifle, get a 5.56. With that being said, the brands I would stay away from out of the gate: Bear Creek Arsenal, Palmetto State Armory, and Radical Firearms. Just to name a couple.
All the friends.
Just stay away from those rifles. I don't care if your friend's buddy's pal's dad has had good luck with them. We're talking about a budget gun, but we're also talking about a defensive rifle that at some point you're hoping will be of some kind of utility to you. If it was a ranged toy and you never shoot a rifle, still don't buy those. At that point, buy the Smith & Wesson M&P Sport 2. Do that.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend that for a defensive rifle, but a fun gun, why not?
Right. And you bring up a really good point. When we're talking about these budget rifles and these Gucci ARs, at some point, we're building them to defend ourselves, our family, our loved ones. So it's not something you want. You can do it on a budget. You can do it well. But you don't want to just totally cheap out and get those rifles we previously mentioned, because they're not quality. It's not worth putting your time and effort into something that has a high likelihood of failing you.
Right. And I wouldn't even say likelihood. I would just say the quality control and the things in the background. I guess something, if there's anybody that's listening was into cars in the early 2000s, they couldn't give Kias away. They tried to give them away with houses. They couldn't do it. They were crap, and they're not great they weren't great vehicles. I can't really speak to the quality now, but they weren't great vehicles. But there was that one guy that had one that worked. Great. You had it, and about 5,000 people did not have that luck.
The only other analogy I can think of, car related, is a really good one I love to use. It goes, you think you got a good deal on a Mercedes, because Mercedes are stupidly hard to maintain. They break down all the time, and you get good deals on them, but there's a reason that you're getting a good deal on it.
Well, it's not even just that. I would say it could run for 10,000 miles, but when it eventually does break down, you're going to basically spend what you spent on the car to fix it.
Correct. And that applies to these rifles that we previously mentioned. So you're better off starting from a good solid platform, a good solid block of cheese to carve out, than you are buying that budget nasty cheese. Sorry, I'm thinking about cheese now.
Cheese on the brain. So I would stay away from building rifles. I would, if you're just getting into this and you want somewhere to start, I would say buy a complete rifle. Ruger makes some pretty decent entry level rifles. Their 5.56 line, they have one that is a M-LOK rail. Now that's a mounting option. Mm-hmm. When you hear M-LOK, KeyMod, or 1913, those are all different interfaces that you use to attach optics and or accessories.
What's the most common?
1913 would technically be the most common, because no matter, even if you buy a rifle with an M-LOK rail or handguard, it's still going to have mil standard 1913 rail on it, so you can mount an optic. But the handguard, which is the forend, that's going to have either M-LOK, 1913, or KeyMod. And those are means to attach accessories. So make sure you know what you're buying when you buy it, because there are still some KeyMod rails and attachments and things floating around. But pretty much there was a bit of an accessory or mounting or rail war for a while. It was KeyMod or M-LOK.
Right.
M-LOK won.
Well, because they're better, but
I objectively, I don't know if it was better or worse, but it is definitely the predominant option now. So look for now. It's very enticing to get the entry level M4 clone looking rifle with the clamshell handguard that the original M4s and the M4A1s use.
Guilty.
Yes, you are. But the problem becomes when you want to try to put that second most important thing, or equally most important thing, a white light. It's a lot harder to mount white light to something that has not been designed to mount accessories. Now, you can mount things to front sight or to triangle front sights or front sight blocks, but if we're trying to keep this simple, I would say stick with something that has M-LOK. It makes it easy. It may not look as cool as the M4 from the early 2000s, but it's more utilitarian. And at the end of the day, if we're building a defensive rifle, that's something you should be looking for.
I full-heartedly agree with you because I was guilty of buying that clamshell-looking cool rifle, and I spent pretty much the cost of the rifle on a new upper. So,
yep.
Don't make the mistake I did. Just do it right the first time around. Save yourself the headache. Moving on.
So, if you're just trying to have a rifle as a defensive gun, I would say, again, to reiterate, sighting system, white light, leave it alone. If we're talking pure utility.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. Sighting system, white light. And if it's iron sights, make sure you have the time, the money to go to the range, live ammo, train. And if you can do that and you have the time and the money to do that, then maybe you cannot get a red dot. But if you don't have the time and the money to constantly refining your skills, because it's like riding a bicycle. If you don't do it for a while, they kind of drop off.
I don't know.
Getting a dot is a great way for entry people to not have to spend so much time at the range perfecting it.
Again, it's the great equalizer. It makes it so everybody can do it.
Yes.
So, and I know a lot of people get bent around the axle of backup iron sights. I mean, if you're not really, all it's doing is sitting next to your bed, unpopular opinion, I don't really know that iron sights really matter because you still have to put the time and the effort to use them. If you don't do it, they're just on your rifle for no reason at all. So
they're just the novelty at that point.
Yeah, put a sighting system on your rifle. If we're doing this bare bones, sighting system, white light. Don't worry about the iron sights. Zero it, make sure put some practice rounds through it. Make sure it works. Make sure it's zeroed. Know your distances. Do the research, because, this isn't one-stop shopping here, because it's a little hard for me to tell you this over the podcast into your ear holes than you doing some basic research into it.
Use the
zero it, white light.
The military created it for a reason.
Yep. So, DARPANET is here to serve you.
Amen to that.
All right. Next, let's go on a little bit. We could do a little pit stop into mid tier, if you will.
Okay.
Do you want to visit mid tier for a minute?
One does not simply walk into mid tier, but we can try. For everyone out there, I've been watching this show recently, and I wanted to make a small reference to it, and that was my reference.
I love how new you are to this, and I've been doing this since I was 6.
I've only been doing it for 5 years, give or take.
I'm disappointed. He hasn't even seen the director's cuts.
Oh God!
Disgusting.
Moving on.
Disgusting.
Sorry, people. He was going down a totally different rabbit hole, not related to the ARs at all.
Not related to rifles.
That's my fault. Sorry. Just move on from that.
All right, so let's get into Gucci / mid tier. So when we're talking about that for the layman, because that's what this is.
Yes.
When we talk about higher tier rifles, we're talking about, at the bare minimum, we're talking about FNs. We're talking about Sons of Liberty Gunworks. That's a lower tier. but
HNKs.
That's way high, way high tier. And then we start getting into different operating systems, piston guns, long stroke piston guns. So, as opposed to the standard operation, which is
Right.
direct impingement, which is still piston, but it's internal, as opposed to an operational rod, which impinges on the face
Right.
of the bolt key, which does effectively the same thing. It's fine. So we're getting into different things, but then once we start going past, okay, I have this gun, I have a sight, and I have a white light. I'm more interested. What do I do? Next thing, I would start. I would think about upgrading the rifle or selling the rifle and buying a higher quality rifle. So start getting into your FNs, or you start getting into your LWRCs, your LMTs. So you start introducing modern solutions to some of the problems. It's very easy to try to put bolt-on solutions to an outdated or antiquated system in terms of ambidextrous controls and
Right.
things like that. So, and then we can kind of go into, what do you want the rifle to do? Are you using it for your house? Or are you taking it and benching it and trying to make hits at X amount of ranges? Because then you can get into
Right.
different calibers. You can get into different optics. You can get into different mounts. 5.56 and 223 bullet weights. So, and what they do and what that means for you. And the only, just to backtrack for 2 seconds, in terms of caliber and bullet weights for you when with your entry level
Yes.
rifle, 55 grain,
All day, every day.
dead. That's all you need. Just federal 55 grain 223 or 5.56. Leave it alone. Just that.
I can speak from experience because I keep up to date on ammo prices fairly reasonably, and man, they push that 62 grain tip, and they push it like it's God's caliber.
Do not use 62 grain armor piercing, and that's what 62 grain green tip is. When you see the little green marker on the end of the round, that's an AP round. AP is armor piercing. Do not use that in your house. It literally has something called a penetrator. How many conversations I've had with people, they're like, well, I run armor piercing green tips. Or people that are like, I run the green tip. And I'm like, do you know what that is?
I'm giving up. People ask me stuff sometimes at work, and I give up. I'm giving up arguing with them over this because it's this. I don't want to get down the rabbit hole. All right, moving on. 55 grain, perfectly fine.
As a whole, I would say, actually, past your desire to shoot through barriers and body armor, stay away from 62. It's not that accurate. It's not that great of ammo. It's a lot more sharp. It's loaded a lot more spicy or hot than 55. It's not as shootable. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan. I don't dislike the round, but I don't think there's a lot of benefits to it in my head.
Right. Yeah, it serves a purpose for some stuff, but for our purposes that we're talking about, 55 grade is M193. You're totally fine. Done.
Yeah. So stay away from anything that's marked M855. And please, if you ever happen by something called M855A1,
don't do it.
Really stay away from that.
Don't do it. Ooh, it's
A1 is just an upgraded version of that round. And if you like the internals of your rifle, do not shoot too much of it. Granted, they're like, it's a lot of money per round now because it's hard to find. But when you do find it, you'll know.
Yeah. I think what you mean to say is if you enjoy the rounds feeding from the magazine into the chamber smoothly and beautifully, stay away from that. Because that will just ruin it.
It's an updated armor piercing round. That's all the A1 means. It's just an updated version. and it's way more aggressive. So basically the front half of the round, the exposed round that isn't seated into the case, is a penetrator, an exposed penetrator. So just so you know, don't do that, or do whatever you want to do.
No.
I'm saying you
We're
probably
going to
shouldn't.
say don't do that. It's PSA. Don't do it.
Yeah, just probably don't. So, and then we can get into more boutique rounds like 68, 69 grain, 72 grain, 70 grain, and my favorite, 77 grain OTM.
Yes.
So we'll have a whole episode based on the Mark 12 and 77 grain ammunition. We will, I promise.
It's coming. It's in the works. It's on my desk in a pile somewhere.
We shall do it. But you can get into different bullet weights. That's something you should consider. The other thing you should consider is when you start getting into you start getting more interested in the rifle, you can get into different gas systems and different barrel lengths and what you want to do. I have no hard, fast rule for things that you should do. A lot of it comes down to experimentation.
Yes.
And what you want. And then you can get into different optics. So LPVOs, low power variable optics. You can get into just regular or magnified optics. And something else you can consider, if you're just kind of dipping your toe in, if you still have that Holosun or that basic or that primary arms red dot,
yes,
you can get into something called a magnifier.
Yes.
Which
yes, you can.
Does what it sounds like. It magnifies what you see.
As long as you secure it properly, it won't lose zero.
Yeah. Yeah, with a quality mount.
Oh, God.
Stupid vortex.
All right, so talking about mid-tier rifles, the Gucci rifles, what are we looking at?
Mid-tier, like I said, we could talk mid-tier rifles, LWRC, Sons of Liberty Gunworks, FN, any of the FN rifles. I mean, anything in the, I would say, $1,200 to $1,600 range. Daniel Defense is upper tier. I mean, they're, especially the new
Go-to
Gen 3 rail systems. Yeah, because they have the new ambi lowers. Those are the Gen 3s or the V3s. Those are really cool. Those are a couple grand. So you could start working up your price range, and then you start getting into diminishing return.
Right.
And what you expect the rifle to do. And then obviously, I've left the best for last, and best was kind of with an asterisk on it, but Knight's Armament.
Oh, yeah, good old CAC. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not KAK, because that's another one of those brands maybe stay away from.
Oh, God, no, not them.
Yeah, but KAC, Knights Armament Company, they do a lot of development for the military. They're a small, I wouldn't say boutique, but a smaller range. Well, and then I would also say LMT, which is Lewis Machine and Tool. They make also great rifles. So when we say mid-tier and high-tier, I mean, it just kind of comes down to what labels on the rifle. At some point, they just work. Obviously, you're going to have your statistical outliers. You're going to have ones with poor quality control. You're going to have one that randomly doesn't work. But all in all, typically the rifles are pretty well QC'd.
Right.
And they have pretty good products.
And it goes back to, I mean, ARs are plug-and-play platforms. They really are. But the mid-tier, high-tier rifles, you're starting off with a higher-tier setup where a lot of the guesswork for stuff has been taken out of the equation. So you're not worried about having to, how do I put ambi controls on my rifle? How do I do extended mag releases on my rifle? How do I do this, do that? People have thought about how to do that, and they sell your rifle for a higher price.
And the next step I would say is if you are not financially constrained, I would say do what we said as a bare minimum, but invest in an LMT or a Knight's Armament, but put a red dot and a flashlight on. get an Aimpoint T2, get an Aimpoint Comp M5, get a Arisaka or a Mod Light, which is a higher quality light with way more lumens and way more candela. And you could start, but I would say still set the rifle up basic and then grow into it, as opposed to having a lower end rifle and trying to get it to work with what you want. Because at the end of the day, the LMT and the Knights Armament and the Daniel Defense and the LWRC are going to have a lot higher tolerances and accuracy standards than the Ruger or the M&P or any of those basic level rifles. They're not going to be as quite
right. And it's because the
quality
companies
as the
making
higher
these
tier
rifles on the high end, they make it with a certain mindset, so they have higher tier, higher quality standards versus the lower tier rifles, where it's kind of like they're just churning them out to sell them to people, and they're just building them for people to take to the range, maybe take hunting, maybe defend your house with it, ? But that's not like the main driving force behind their designs on the lower tier.
So I think there's a lot to think of, but at the end of the day, just to reiterate, whether you are just getting started and you have a lot of money or you have under $1,000, either way, get a red dot, get a white light, learn how to use both, and set your rifle up with some good quality 55 grain and good quality magazines. Here's the last little thing we're going to talk about.
Oh no.
Is the good quality magazines. Buy Magpul PMags.
What gen?
That's it.
What gen?
Gen 2, 3, Gen 1. I don't care. Buy Magpul PMags. Now, if you want, you can get GI, OK Industries, D&H, and all those fun steel magazines and aluminum magazines.
Yes.
Those are cool. But at the end of the day, if you know nothing or you've got nothing else from this conversation, buy Magpul PMags and be done with it. Do not buy Hextac. Do not buy any other. Don't buy the Koreans or random import magazines that are really enticing because they're super cheap. Don't do it. Don't buy the ETS. Don't do it.
They're cheap.
Don't buy any of
They're
the
cheap for a
3D
reason.
printed crazy. Yeah. Don't buy any of those crap.
MFT.
Don't buy MFT. Don't do that. And for the love of God, don't buy Tapco. They're not even in business anymore. Don't buy those. Please don't do that.
Okay. Yeah. I
can't stress. Or better yet, do not buy Pro Mag. No Pro Mag. Oh God!
Just because it says pro doesn't mean they're actually pro.
No, they're not.
It's false advertising at its finest.
Absolutely.
I will admit to our viewers out there that I was enticed with the Hex Mags early on. I was like, ooh, these are a good deal. I called my buddy up who's knowledgeable about firearms, who's speaking with us today, Mr. Bryce. And he laughed at me for a good solid 10 minutes before explaining how terrible the mags were. I haven't used them since.
They are just absolutely criminally terrible. So buy PMags if you know nothing else. If you've gotten nothing else from this, just buy PMags.
And PMags are pretty cheap. They're like $20 a mag, sometimes 10.
Here's the best.
Like you can buy them in a barrel at a gun store for like
the
10.
best thing I can tell you to do is go to the most well-known firearms trainer on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, and go to the military or go to a foreign military and see what magazine pops up the most. Buy that. Because it's a PMag. That's what it is. I already know what it is. It's a PMag. Do that. Jesus Christ. I cannot stand the conversations I've had about people trying to justify their absolute abysmal quality tier nonsensical magazine, which sometimes more expensive. Don't get that. That's crazy. The only reason you don't buy a PMag is so that you can buy the M3, the PMag M3, which is updated, so that you can put it in a different rifle that you couldn't normally use it with.
Right.
That's why.
All right. So we're ranting about this a lot because remember, when you set these rifles up, yes, they're fun to set up. Yes, they're interesting, and we want you to get into them. And there's a budget way to do it, but there's a proper way to do it. If you do it proper the first time, you won't have to repeat it. You won't have to spend more money. You won't have to be laughed out of your local gun shop for asking for mags that everyone knows are totally garbage. So start out right the first time and build from that. Build from that great block of cheese and build it into something like fondue or whatever master cheese there is. Sorry, still thinking about cheese here.
That's beautifully single-minded. I like this. So I think that's a good place for us to cap this, as we have kind of covered what we wanted to cover. But in terms of rifles, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it right, and there are even more ways to do it wrong. But the easiest way, red dot, decent rifle, 55 grain, Magpul PMags, and some kind of quality sight system that you've practiced with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And since we're wrapping this up, we might want to say the next episode will be even more interesting stuff about Bryce. Take it away.
So the next episode we're going to cover is the interesting world of holsters, more specifically Safariland's lovely, interesting, mind-numbingly annoying family of holsters, more specifically the 6000 series, and how to, maybe not necessarily just about the holsters, but how to get them to more, in a more appropriate, user-friendly setup, and I'll elaborate on that in the next episode, but how to set it up on a gun belt, the budget way, correct, and the cheapest way, the budget way, and the Gucci way, or the Gucci-ish way. So
budget way is my way. All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Thank you so much, and don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, and find us on Facebook and Spotify.
The Grams.
No, we're not on Instagram yet.
All right. Peace out, y'all.
Bye. Welcome back, all 7 of our listeners. How are you, Kevin?
I'd be better if we started on the intro that we have.
That was the intro. Oh, that was the preview.
Oh, God.
God damn. Oh, it was just silence.
Oh, this is a great blooper. We have to leave this in. This is golden.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'll leave it in. All right. I'll have to put it on the end, but
yeah, no, put it on the end. But that was fucking gold. All right, this is the intro. I'm like, what?
All right. Ready?
Yes.
3, 2,